Okay, guys, we are live. Hi to everybody in this live video. We are here with fellow YouTube creator and 40k, of course, YouTube creator Asmogan. Hi to you.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the channel and to this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. This should be a good show.
Oh yes, I just can't wait myself. So, first question actually that I wanted us to talk about is how did you react when you heard about the female custodies thing?
Very hostily. I made a video like that immediately on it because I saw it leaked via the codex when it was first being shown around by some individual people. I I was immediately incensed because I knew what it meant. I knew that politics had finally cemented itself as a turning point and a motivating point for GW in front of everybody. It's been leaking in over the last few years, but that for me was like the first true like smack in the face of everyone. So I immediately called it out. It was, and my initial coverage was before GW had said uh, they had always been there. They had always been amongst the original 10,000. So my initial coverage had a bit of a mixed response because some people were like, "Hey, we'll give benefit of the doubt. Could be a typo. Could be this. Could be that." But I was vindicated within 24 hours. Yeah, it was such a stretch, and there's been a lot of fundamental dishonesty from like I call them woke hammer, the left leaning people who have been like championing like all this crap politics being pushed into 40k. They've been trying to excuse it and defend it. It's been comical at best.
Just a sec because my mic was muted unintentionally. Thank you guys for letting me know in the chat. Yes,
Oh,
thank you. I saw on the watch as well. I'm trying to, save the echo. I mean, to minimize the echo on your side, guys. So that's why. Yeah, so I was saying what you missed basically about the custodies, how shocking everything was, and the fact that people are trying to make all kinds of excuses for why there are female custodies there. And, it's not our job to make excuses for on behalf of any company for anything. And it's not our job to write the gaps in the lore so we can, come up with all the other things that GW, I mean, that is their job. So,
absolutely.
you know,
And yeah, they've completely bungled this situation. And like we said, the tweet with there've always been female custodies, and them being virtually silent in regards to the situation since. I don't know if you've seen it, but they did a faction focus video on their channel about the custodies, and there was zero mention of female custodies in it, zero explanation.
the
That could
trailer,
have, yeah,
the
yeah,
trailer of
that
the
could have,
stories. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was a prime opportunity for them to somewhat salvage it. In my opinion, it wouldn't have salvaged it no matter what. But for the majority of the fan base who were ready for some kind of thing to latch onto, an olive branch to latch onto, that was their opportunity to kind of elaborate and be like, okay, we do have stories lined up. We do have a plan for this. It isn't as blatant as we've clearly done it, but no, they just completely ignored the situation. They talked about the custodians like they always have, as an all male faction. They made no elaborations.
Yeah, it's like that never happened. And the rest of the people that are like, oh, well, it doesn't matter on the tabletops. Who cares? I mean, I just don't think that they are seeing the bigger picture here and actually what it was done. I mean, nobody gives this a lot of thought, and this is how they can actually integrate any bullcrap in the lore. We gotta be at least more aware of what the heck is happening, because then what is quality, what is storytelling in respect to the characters or anything really, if we just allow everything to go in. I mean, really, if there was a new announcement now that a man is going to be integrated into Sisters of Battle, I'll be like, what is it the brother of Battle? What's happening then with the Astartes? Like, what's the logic here? You know?
I mean, with this induction of women just being ham fisted into the custodies, I mean, at this point, what it doesn't matter. Like, there could be orc custodies tomorrow, and it would make just as much sense. It'd be just as a insult to the established lore. as it stands right now, the lore has been completely torn apart. There's no foundation anymore because with this, things that have been a certain way since the very beginning can now change. And part of like the cope around the situation is like, oh well, there's been retcons before, and they always try and pull that line, like, oh, there's been these major retcons, there's been these major things. Why is this such a big deal? The difference is almost all prior retcons to now, for the most part, have been additions, and the few retcons you can point to that were controversial were controversial. Like people are like, well, what about the Votan situation? Squats were said to be killed and eaten by Tyranids. Well, now they're back as leagues of Votan. And my response to that is simple. There was backlash about that. There was fury about that. There are people who refuse to play Votan because they are aesthetically nothing like squats. They are ripoffs of StarCraft aesthetic for Terrans, and or ripoff of the dwarves from Deep Rock Galactic. Their aesthetic is completely out of place, almost as much so as the Tau. Yeah, like to act like that came off with no backlash or no frustration. And don't even get me started on Primaris. That's another one they point to. Everyone was infuriated and incensed by Primaris. To this day, there are people who quit 40k because of Primaris. So again, they talk about prior retcons like there wasn't backlash. There was. Every time they have fundamentally changed the setting and fundamentally changed the lore, it has come with backlash. The reason that this is even worse than Yomel is because, unlike with Primaris, Primaris was an addition onto the lore. It was retconning certain details, but it was an add-on. Like they were a new thing. Custodes having always been female and it being done with no ceremony and them gaslighting and lying to the community saying it's always been this way, that's completely different. No retcon nor addition in the past has come with this blatant level of in disregard for quality or ceremony. That's just it's complete bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree. And actually, with the addition of the Primaris, I personally like the idea that there's stronger Astartes that can be added to the other Astartes and just kick ass and help, because it's not like the Imperium is enemies free. It's exactly the opposite. So any help that the Imperium can get is welcome, in my opinion. Now, of course, I understand that people that play the tabletop, that's kind of like, oh, we have to buy another thing now. I understand. But in terms of the lore, I just like the idea. I like the idea of a bit more badass space marines, and also the idea that actually regular space marines can still beat some of the Primaris, because they're still individuals, and some warriors can be better than others, even if the Primaris are enhanced. So I just really like those stuff. you
Yeah,
know.
that's fair. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of Primaris. My biggest problem is I like the aesthetic. I mean, that is one thing. Like, I disagree with like a lot of people who hated on Primaris. A lot of the hatred came and it bled over to the aesthetic of the models and stuff. I like the models, especially the Sword Brethren. I really like the update they did for them for Primaris models. What I don't like is the lore. The lore explanation for them to this day is very pitiful. They pulled out a Gary Stu character with Call to explain all of it. There was ways they could have done Primaris that would have worked. They just went the worst route they could have lore wise. So I can understand you liking the idea though. The core concept isn't the problem; it's the execution, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I see. But still that cannot even come close to the custody thing. Yeah, I,
Oh
I
no,
think that a lot of people have an issue with, I mean, understanding what is the difference between the previous editions and why is that not a retcon and now this is a retcon. But really, they were building upon the lore in many ways, or screwing it up and building upon the lore. But now they're just completely throwing it out the window. So there's a difference there.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Huh. And a lot of other people are saying that they just have to give more attention to Sisters of Silence and Battle, because what are they doing really? You know.
Yeah, I mean, Sisters of Battle, they've been getting a little bit more love in the last 5 or so years. And I don't know if you collect what armies you collect, but
Well,
the Sisters
right
of
now
Battle,
just Custodes and Sisters of Silence, because that is what one of my dear viewers gifted to me. I can't really afford the hobby itself here and there. Not really many places that you can go. Actually, no places that you can go play the tabletop. So Custodes are just my favorite, and he just sent me that, so I do that.
I mean, that's fair. Custodes are actually probably one of the cheaper armies. Not actual price tag value. They got the same like combat patrol costs and stuff, but you only need like a combat patrol, and then that's all you'll ever need really for Custodes. But with Sisters of Battle, I collect Sisters of Battle. I collect Primaris Marines, Firstborn Marines, especially for Horus Heresy, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights. Orcs are my main army. I collect quite a few armies, and I've been keeping track for the last 11 years. I've been in the hobby, almost 12, of Sisters of Battle and Sisters of Silence. And in terms of lore-wise love they've gotten, Sisters of Battle have gotten a couple books here and there, Mark of Faith being a notable example. But outside of that, they've gotten like nothing lore-wise. Like they've been pitifully represented lore-wise. Same with the Sisters of Silence. It's even more uncomprehensible. Like they get so little attention and love, and they're still only an add-on tabletop wise to the Custodes. The fact that we're getting female Custodes and we still don't have a full dedicated army to Sisters of Silence. We have like very few to no dedicated books about them. It's just a huge slap in the face to pre-established characters in lore. Sorry, I just dropped some.
Yeah, it's a bit
Uh,
bizarre because they're next to the freaking emperor. you know.
I mean, there's so much you can do with that. Like their concept is so fascinating. They're null psychers. They're blanks. Like being around a normal person being around them causes them to be like feel disturbed, depressed, and horrified. There's so much storytelling you could do with them. There's so much love you can give to them. Yet they're thrown aside and into the dumpster in favor of cheap political virtue signaling.
Yeah. And what do you think about the argument that because back in the 80s, I think, they were trying to get female space marines into the lore, but they couldn't because the whole thing with people not buying the models. But everyone are like to say that, well, the writers wanted to get them in, but GW didn't approve because nobody was buying the models. But since the writers wanted, so that must mean that it's super fine that GW can do this retcon now. I don't think the two things have anything to do with each other. What do you think?
No, like it's the same thing with whenever people try and pull up Rogue Trader or Second Edition. Whenever they try and pull up like the particularly Rogue Trader stuff with like the female Space Marine models and things like that, and then not selling, that is at kindest a complete misunderstanding of what Rogue Trader and what that early era of 40k was to what it is now. Back then, like people think of Rogue Trader as, oh, it's first edition 40k, so things in it you can reasonably pull up in 40k as representative of 40k. That's not true. Rogue Trader is comparable to storyboards or a rough draft of something. It was a prototype. It was them testing the waters with a brand new rule set, with a brand new setting. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have a setting yet. They didn't have anything properly written out. It was a testing ground. So trying to pull up Rogue Trader as examples of this or that, it's completely disingenuous and intellectually dishonest. Nothing from that is 40k. It was all prototypes. It's like taking a deleted scene for a movie and saying, "Hey, now changes everything about the story of the movie." No, it was deleted. It wasn't part of the final product. You can't call it up as part of the product. It was removed, or it wasn't
Technically
part
not
of the final.
canon. It's,
Yeah,
it's not
it's not canon.
canon at all.
Simply put, Rogue Trader is not canon. And as for the argument of like, oh, the writers always wanted female Space Marines or female Custodes, that's also not true. The writers at points certainly due to like the political climate of things now want female Space Marines. A lot of the Black Library writers are super woke, so yeah, they want it for virtue signaling points now, but back in like the 90s, the 80s, or the early 2000s, I'm sorry, no. Like there might have been a small push from one or two writers for sure, but the idea that all of them wanted like female Space Marines like that was part of the concept, that was part of any original idea. That's just not true. And as for the models that didn't sell back then, again, they weren't Space Marines. They were proto Sisters of Battle. Even back then, like they weren't proto Space Marines. They were women in power armor That doesn't therefore equate to Astartes. And again, Astartes weren't Astartes back then either. So it's a lot of disingenuous intellectual dishonesty when those points are made up.
Yeah, technically, Sisters of Battle do have a power armor of their own. It's just,
Absolutely.
made for their purposes and all of that. Okay, but you know what I thought about these days? It's gonna get a bit confusing, but you know how you can say that some writer, and in this case GW as a whole, maybe have written themselves into a corner because some stuff just kind of don't make sense. Like for example, how is the process now of Custodes eligible and good enough to also make women Custodes, but the other process that's supposed to be inferior for making Space Marines cannot make women Space Marines. You know?
Exactly. I mean, like they've done no legwork to explain it. So, and they constantly also pull up the point of, oh well, we don't know the process of Custodes. It's like, yeah, but we do know it's more complex. That's one of the few things we do know. Like, it doesn't make sense for it to be an easier process than making Space Marines.
Yeah,
Custodes are
it's
infinitely
the
more
opposite.
powerful. So,
Yeah.
internal like consistency and logic within the setting, it doesn't make sense. So, and they've done nothing to explain it. They've done, and again, they're not adding female Space Marines or female Custodes. They're retroactively saying they've always been there. And even if you don't like agree with the internal consistency, like the processes of their development or creation, and you make the argument, well, they never said they couldn't be made for females. The Emperor wasn't a fan of women being super soldiers. That was something he actively made a rule against. He made the Space Marines intentionally all male. That was by design. He spoke to his right hand man who about the Primarchs, who jokingly said, "Hey, you should have had daughters instead of sons," and the Emperor laughed at him. That's the man we're talking about. He's the one who designed the process for Custodes and Astartes, and he did not want female super soldiers. Now the reasons are debatable. It's popular fan theory is that he didn't want a super soldier powerful race, so he didn't want male and female of that level to then create a super species above human. He wanted humans to conquer the galaxy and would eventually have discarded this Astartes and the Custodes. But as far as I recall in the lore, that's not confirmed. That's just popular fan theory, and there's context to prove it, but there's also context to counteract it. Some novels have mentioned that the Space Marines are sterile anyway. The only way that they can procreate is through the gene seed, and it's similar idea with the Custodes.
Oh yeah, for sure they
So
cannot procreate. They have no desire to do that. They're just made to be soldiers.
yeah, absolutely. So
So yeah.
yeah,
There's
like
something else that you said there, but I lost my train of thought. Ah, I hope that I hope that I can remember. But yeah, it was
that's
something
right.
very interesting about the process. Oh yes, about the process of making the custodes. That yeah, we don't know what it is, but obviously it's so sacred and it's so difficult that only particular individuals can become uh, custodes. And then it says explicitly that only sons, noble sons, can become custodes. So if, let's say, 10,000 people, from 10,000 people, we take five that can become Astartes, we can probably take one that can become custodes. So how then is possible that a woman can qualify for becoming a custodes? Yeah, it just becomes crazy when you start thinking about it, like rowing in a circle or something.
Yeah, and that's part of the frustration of arguing with these people who are in favor of it. A lot of them like pull up examples that just straight up don't work. They don't align with prior established stuff in the lore. Again, the motivation behind this isn't anything beneficial to the hobby. It's not beneficial to us as fans. It's not beneficial at all for the setting. This is all done for IRL politics. And that's where the backlash is coming from. Like a lot of people have disingenuously said that this is like, oh, men don't want women in our war game, which is not true. It's not true at all. Any woman who's ever shown interest in 40k has gotten a lot of support. Lots of guys have no problem with girls checking this stuff out. A lot of us want our girlfriends and our wives and those we're women we have in our personal life. We want them to be interested in this stuff. We just want them to be interested in it for what it is. Not to be interested because it has some arbitrary like forced representation for women. I mean, it's just it's cheap and it's an insult to women because it's under the guise of like, well, women won't find interest in something unless there's a direct mirror held up and said, "Hey, look, you're in the setting. Hey, look, you're here, and we're gonna artificially put you at the top of everything. Like you're the best super soldiers. You're the best." It makes women. It depicts women as like super narcissistic, self-absorbed, and I just yeah, that's not true. Like some women are like that, some men are like that, but the majority or to a point that it would like completely up the sales for no, that's not how it works.
Oh yeah, thank
It's
you for saying that. I mean, that's extremely objective. I can tell
yeah,
you that. And I
it's
never
ridiculous.
ever wanted a female to be in anything for me to like it. Never even occurred to me. Like, what? I mean,
No, yeah,
I said it many, many times, but I grew up with all the Arnold movies, you know, Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, then whatever else you can mention most of those movies and back in the day something. My dad used to show them to me. They're all with men, and I never thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I cannot relate to anyone. No, it's quite the opposite. I mean, we are human beings. We can relate to each other. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Then, of course, when I discovered other female characters, I mean, female characters in general, I was like, well, that is great. And I never thought that, oh my gosh, now this is a woman and this is a man, and they're heroes. Like, what? I just enjoy what it is. I enjoy the characters for what they are, and that's it. And Warhammer got me in when I saw the Astartes project because it was so freaking badass. And it was so unique looking, all the huge Astartes with the huge armor. That was so cool. And I was like, wow, what is this? I never saw anything like that before. And then I started researching, and here we are. So I'm cool with male and I'm cool with female characters if they're written well, if they're written like Mary Sue's, like you said, narcissistic women that everything is on the silver platter for them and they don't have to work for anything and they just have everything already. They beat everybody up. Then what's the point of that? No growth, no meaning, no substance. Who wants to watch that? You know?
exactly. Like part of what makes characters in fiction so compelling, and I think you'll agree, is this is the part that's like relatable that actually quote unquote representation matter like it matters more than representation as the woke constantly put it because they put it on immutable characteristics. It's like, oh, you can't relate to a character unless they're the same race, same sex, same ethnicity, same religion as you. Like they think like those outward like immutable characteristics are what define what it's racist, it's sexist, that's the ironic is they quote representation to avoid racism and to fight racism, but it's always about racism in concept because it's the idea that as human beings we can't relate to someone unless they are just like us physically, when the most important part about relating to a character in fiction and in real life people in like history has nothing to do with how they look or like what gender they are. It's through their struggles, it's through their goals and their life experience. Like for example, like I grew up watching like Disney movies and stuff. One of my favorite characters from that era was Mulan, and I went on a huge rant about this before. But what I found relatable to her, according to representation, I shouldn't feel represented by her at all because she's a woman, she's Asian, and she's a different age than me. She's like she has nothing in terms of like that outward unimportant details in relation to me whatsoever. But she's one of the characters I find the most relatable because she goes through struggle. She goes through hardship and heartache. She is trying to help her father. She's trying to go and fight for her country in a war. She struggles in training physically and fights through it to keep up with her brothers in battle. That is an amazing character arc, and that's relatable for all people. And that right there is what matters most in terms of relatability with characters. Like gender, race, ethnicity, none of that matters at all. What matters is the substantive elements of a character, their struggles, their goals, their thoughts on things, and how they experience the world. That's what matters most.
Oh yeah, and that's just so great. You like to talk about Mulan and give her as an example. I like to talk about Xena and give her as an example. Because back in the day, that show had everything,
Xena, Warrior
diversity.
Princess with Lucy Lawless.
Yes, Teen War Princess with Lucy Lawless, exactly.
Love that character.
It had absolutely everything, even a transgender character, season two. And that was in 1995. And it was so well integrated, and you felt for that character, and it wasn't, in your nose. It was just very genuine and great. And you can watch it as a kid and still understand and not be put off by it. Then there was a lot of black actors that were participating there for a lot of roles that should be for a white Greek man, or I mean, looking Greek man. But of course, because it's fiction, you can say, well, it's a pass. That's a pass, okay, and it's a fantasy show and all of that. But it just didn't matter because it was so true and awesome. And then there was the thing, the first time that I saw ever the LGBT push was exactly in Xena, in like the middle of the, I mean, 10 years ago, let's say, because I was in these forums where a lot of fans were talking and they always like to push Xena and Gabrielle as a couple. And I didn't see that because I was just watching it as well, just a person that is watching the show basically. And of course, there was under like subtext, as they called it. And then they pushed it and they pushed it, and eventually we get to current years, and now it's accepted that they were lovers, which was never canon. So it's like, okay, this is never canon. It's the same thing like with the argument with what you said about Rogue Trader. It was never really canon, it was not established, but everyone are like, no, that is what happened. We should take that as a fact because this producer and that producer and the actor said so, but that is always to, please the fans and those people that are pushing for that stuff. So even back from so long ago, this became something, unfortunately.
Right. And a big difference with how like the 90s handled, like you said, like logically and fantasy wise, like white Greek characters, but there were black characters. Now, what's different between like how representation is and diversity is forced now versus then is it wasn't done forcedly. Like there was no like behind the scenes like quota of like, okay, we need this many black men, we need this many Asian men. It was just, hey, we're casting, we need extras, or we need talented actors, let's just put them in who will do good. It was based on a meritocracy. It was based on how good they were. So it's like, hey, this guy actors happens to be black, we're doing like a Greek mythology show, but they play this character, do this role so well, and it's fantasy, we could still work with it. There was no like forced political criteria to it. They just did it naturally, and that's why people were more open to it. That's why people were also more accepting and loved it a lot more. That's why you won't see any of the BS like fighting we have now. Now it's not being done because this is the best actor for the job or they have the most talent, and it just comes off so genuine despite it. It's because it's forced. It's because we know for a fact like, oh, this character used to be a white character and was changed to a black character. Was it because this actor is so much better? No. 9 out of 10 times it's done because, well, we need to have a black character, put him in. And it's incredibly insulting and frustrating. It's, again, if it was just a matter of, okay, we just want the best actor for the job and this actor just blows it out of the park, people would just kind of work around it. But it's the fact that it's being forced, and oftentimes the people put in the roles suck compared to other actors and other people who were lined up to be in those positions that could have been way better and more appropriate. So the climate is very, very different from back then. Back then it was talent. Now it's quota.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned yesterday in your stream about Black Panther, something that most people haven't even talked about because everybody used to praising the movie all the time, but nobody's talking about the fact that we saw like freaking racism against white people in this movie. Like
Oh yeah,
really? Like
there was
what
quite a
the
bit.
heck? Yeah, it was all the
Yeah,
time. I felt like I'm talked down to all the time, and white people this and white people that, and they were rude to this Asian guy. I forgot his name. The Hobbit actor.
Oh.
They're like, oh, you're white, so you don't know anything or something like that. That was all the time. Like, what about if we saw the same thing, but when the roles are reversed?
Yeah, it's part of the political movement, the woke. Like they're hypocrites, and that's the big problem with like why a lot of people are unsubscribing to their whole psychosis is because they're such hypocrites. Like they condemn racism, but they conduct racism to fight racism, and it doesn't make any sense. Like if you're against racism, why are you attacking white people? If you're against sexism, why are you attacking women who don't agree with you? Like it's a constant hypocrisy from them, and I think the Black Panther movie is a pretty good pocket version of it, especially since it was such a high profile film. That film could have had no outward mention of race. It could have just shown off an African country and an African superhero and just had fun with it. But they had no need whatsoever to add any kind of subtext of race that was not in the original comics as much, as far as I recall. Uh, they could have just had fun with it and had a cool superhero who just happened to be black, just like Blade back in the '90s, a cool superhero who just happened to be black, and everyone could have gotten behind him. And for the most part of the film, to its credit, you can. But my real problem comes in with Killmonger, the main villain. He's a young black man, and his whole motivation, and I'm pretty sure it is different from the comics, his whole motivation is he's trying to fight racism because he's from America. He's trying to fight racism, but his solution to it is basically do everything that he perceives done bad to him and his people by white people and just do it back to them. And in fact, he wants to go further. He wants to do mass genocides against white people. Like that's part of his goal. Now that's fine in an interesting concept for a villain, like an easily hateable villain, right? Like because you're a massive hypocrite. What's depressing is the film itself, as well as the audience, portray Killmonger as a sympathetic villain, despite the fact that he's a complete and utter hypocrite. His goals are to do unto others what was done to him. How are you solving this problem by perpetuating it?
Yeah, it's scary. That's the scary part because
Yeah,
it's
like
like
this,
brainwashing. The movie is brainwashing you.
it's terrifying. Like the film portrays him as sympathetic and relatable and likable, and the audience buy into it. It's like, yeah, he's a totally sympathetic villain. He's in concept, his whole motivation should and his whole goal should make him completely unsympathetic. You can feel bad for him for the suffering he's gone through, but where you should completely lose any likability towards him whatsoever is once he lays out his goals. So that, and the fact that the film makes that part still sympathetic and the audience still walk away sympathetic, yeah, that was a horrifying. But again, it's a sad part is it's a fair microcosm of the politics going on right now in media. The woke are constantly pushing their ideology, and their ideology is hypocrisy. Do unto others what we think have been done to us, but do it twice as bad, and somehow they're the good guys in doing so.
Yeah,
That's
and
why they're
there's a
losing so
lot
much
of
traction.
ignorance in that as well. Misunderstood facts or not knowing the facts at all, even from history, some of the facts. And there was a lot of this, I mean, this ongoing theme that we should feel very badly for something other people did in terms of racism. We ourselves should feel guilty right now for something that we didn't do. you know, Previous generations did, but we have to feel guilty as if we are the same, and we're
Right.
not. And
And
let's
oh, sorry, good.
Yeah, and I would say let's not forget, but a lot of people don't know this. But actually, if you know more of the world history, you'll see that actually my country, we are all white people in general, were under slavery for 500 years by the Ottoman Empire. Today's Turkey, we were under slavery, and we were cooked in vats, and I cannot say the other things even that were done for us for 500 years, forcefully to change our faith to Islam and all those things. So yeah, but nobody knows that white people were subjected to all of that for 500 years. everybody thinks that just only one race have been subjected to that, and we should all feel guilty about it, even though if we haven't done it. And nobody knows their own history as well. I mean, not only the world's history, but their own history as well. So yeah, that's kind of another topic, but it is a base to an extent for the ways that all the woke people think right now. You know, because they do lack a lot of information and they are misled and they are brainwashed. But now they want to, because of that, they just think that it's very appropriate to invade all of the other, whatever they are, universes and introject everything that they want to see in them. And yeah, as you said, it's they are hypocrites and they don't realize that by trying to stop sexism and whatever ism, they're actually perpetuating it and they create more of it. Like, for example, I saw on Twitter that there's one writer that's working now on Space Marine 2, and she's literally writing stuff on Twitter like, oh, white men, comic books were never for you. I'm like, where is this coming from? What? I have no idea how are these companies hiring these people and then they're going on social media and talking all kinds of trash, blatant racism or sexism against men for the most part, but they're also putting themselves on the spot in an extremely bad light. So I don't know, it's disgusting. I just hope that Space Marine 2 is somehow saved besides the fact that she's working on it.
Yep. I'm hoping that, because the thing is with writers, like for games and stuff, they are given a lot of freedom to do what they want. That's the sad part in this case. Normally and traditionally, it should be a good thing, right? For a writer to be able to go their own way and come up with ideas. But in this case, due to like the political climate, it's just overwhelming. And as it stands right now, I'm not going to get Space Marine 2 day one. I'm not pre-ordering it, but that's on principle of all games anyway. Hopefully, narratively, it's fine. I expect it will still have a lot of problems because it's supposed to have like a PvP element, but that's a whole other thing. But as it stands right now, it's like the pervasiveness of the woke ideology pushing itself into so much media, and the thing is, it's fine if you have like that political perspective. There's conversations to be had about things like that. Generally, I think a lot of what they say is complete and utter horseshit. Apologies for my swearing, but it's just, again, you think of it, put any of it under a critical eye. Like, don't get me wrong, like the core of it, hey, sexism is bad, racism is bad. Yeah, everyone can agree to that, and no one in the modern day, except for a very small few people, would have a problem with that. It's the hypocrisy of then doing the very thing that you say you're against. Like, that's where you lose people, and that's why there's a bit of a pendulum swing culturally in my country and in a lot of Western countries right now with that whole political ideology.
Yeah, I just
But
hope that, most of what we see in terms of the woke writing in 40k is going to be like in very small side novels somewhere that most people never read. I just hope that that's the case for the most part because I don't want to read like in the next continuation of the 40k universe, like something with Gilliman and it says, and Gilliman saw her eyes and she was beautiful, and I'm like, wait now. He's not interested in women, okay? What is this? Oh my
yeah,
gosh. I just don't want to see that. Oh yeah. Then somebody, wrote on Twitter that there should be more love in 40k. And once again, go read the love novel, George. Get out of here. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I love stories if they're good, well written, like anything else. But 40k is just not for that. There's a lot more though to 40k that can be enjoyed. So they just want to make everything to be the same, like absolutely the same. Everything should be the same, and basically, uh, the universe itself is like a skin that's put on, and but the all the themes are gonna be the same, all the stories are gonna be like similar, and everything is going to be absolutely retarded. So yeah, that's how it looks like. Do you want to check some of the comments because they were
yeah,
going for a
absolutely.
while?
Yeah,
And hi,
absolutely.
Kit. Hi to Kit in the chat, who is from Chicago Reacts channel. We have done a lot of things with Kit as well. Michael, hi to you too. Rebel Moon was great to watch. I actually started the first one and, well, I stopped it. I just couldn't continue that. I don't know. Have you seen Rebel Moon?
I have. I'm not a fan.
Fair? Absolutely, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? There was a lot of stuff while we were talking about that. While we were talking, sorry. Uh, oh yeah, there's a ton. But I think some of your guys are here as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, a few of them are. Hey guys.
Yes, say if you're from Asmogan's channel, guys. Question for Empress. Does the addition of female Custodes empower you as a woman? No, not at all. It just has nothing to do with that, you know? This has nothing to do. And if anything, as I mentioned before, guys, adding female Custodes, but, you know, when you add them but you don't write anything about them, you don't add the explanation and where have they been this whole freaking time, they're just so meaningless. I mean, there's no notable one that ever talked to Gilliman or the Emperor, whoever. They didn't do anything for 10 plus thousand years, you know, so it's even worse for them to
I mean,
be not notable in the lore.
the common joke that's been tossed around is that they were in the kitchen the whole time.
Oh well, now that is sexist. Okay. And one guy says, Merrick Miller says, Asmogan, you can create better world using the means and methods you condemn. You condemn. Yes.
You can or can't.
Oh, hold on. You
On
can't. I don't know if he meant can.
if you meant what you wrote, which was you can't create a better world using the means and methods you condemn. You can't create a better world using those methods. I agree. You can't make a better world if you use the methods I condemn. If you meant to say you can, I'm afraid I think you're a fool. Because if your idea of making a better world is taking the racism and the sexism and the discrimination from one group and supplanting it, but making it worse on another group, I'm sorry, but I don't subscribe to such a delusion.
Yeah, besides, how is changing something, how is putting stuff that don't belong there and changing the lore, how is that the same lore? How is that the same universe? I don't think that people are getting it that way. They think that whatever it's added is just the same universe again. But it's not, because the universe has nature, you have to stay true to the nature of the universe. You have to know what that is.
And if it just changes at the whim of a political ideology and a real world political movement, there's no point in getting invested in it. Because that same political movement will have different opinions 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. So if the universe can shift due to real world politics at any second, why get invested?
Exactly. And guys, it is escapism. Like, why do we have these fictional universes?
And the
One
sad thing
person.
is, yeah, the sad thing is we're even having these conversations about politics when we should be able to talk about Warhammer just in relation to Warhammer and internal world politics. That should be fun, but instead we're having to talk about all this other real world crap.
Exactly, yeah. One person yesterday said in my comments that he is even more depressed now. If um damn it, the name, it just escaped me for absolutely no reason. This yeah, Sargon of Akkad. If Sargon of Akkad is entered in the lore and he's a real person, not the historical person. I kind of thought at the beginning when I read that it was about a historical person, because Warhammer can add real names from history to the lore sometimes and make them into something new. So I really thought that at the beginning that it was like that, but no, they really added the YouTuber and turned politician, Sargon of Akkad, and I'm like, what? What is this? I mean, this is so out of nowhere, but only a very delusional and retarded person that thinks only about the real world can do that, and not about what he's supposed to be writing, which
Right.
is freaking 40k.
I agree.
And Michael says, I'm creating my own universe story canon thing, and sexism will be there somewhere. I just don't want the cheeks with the womanizers. Yeah, well, it's good to have a sense of humor about it. And Farak says, but apparently escapism is bad because you're not doing enough to create utopia. Okay, well, to that I say, where is the creative freedom of anyone to just make up their own freaking stories? Like, why if I just want to create a story about a suck that's just going around the house and doing nothing? Like, can I do that, or have to make the black sock a female sock? What what is this?
Yeah, it's stupid. That is how the woke think though. Is like if you're not talking about Palestine, if you're not talking about the oppression of women or black people in America, if you're not talking about these things round the clock, that somehow you're actively adding to the problem of the world, and they actually think you're not helping achieve utopia. That's why they push so hard in media and escapism for real world stuff to be pushed in it, because they don't want you to escape. They don't want you to go to a fantasy far, far away. They don't want you to go to a galaxy in the grim darkness of the far future. They don't want you to escape, because if you escape, you're not contributing to their narrative. That's why this stuff gets pushed all the time.
Well, to that I say that is called fanaticism. And they just don't see that they're the one that have a bug in their brain. Okay, and both Arch and Groms are jealous of Sargon being immortalized in 40k. And Tangler said, but what if I want to make an apocalyptic hellhole to rule over? Well, you can't, because you have to put female, male, I don't know, dash, a hamster, ruling helicopter there. If you don't, you are everything on the book. Oh boy, okay. Likes on social media does not equal money. Yeah, also that. And of course,
And
hey,
technically, it depends on the social media you're talking about. On YouTube, it does actually equal money.
yeah, that too. And why don't we call woke people asleep people? I don't know. Maybe because it's longer.
I don't know. They definitely got their heads firmly in up their own asses, so they ain't awake to anything.
Yeah, or Strauss, not Strauss, sorry, that's a other word. I'm thinking in Bulgarian, sorry. An ostrich in a pillow or something. Or you know how they dig their hand in the sand? That's what I
Yeah.
mean. Okay, so if you want to add something, if you have anything else on your mind,
No, I just thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it, and it is wonderful talking to you.
thank you. Thank you too, guys. So, yeah, I put the link down below, of course, to Asmogan if this is the first time that you've seen him. And, of course, we can make more stuff together, hopefully, in the future, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your thoughts down below, and everything else, it is in the description. So, yeah, love you guys. Until next time, with me, the 40k Empress, Jesus, and Asmogan. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.